hopefully soon we'll have our guest on. But we were talking offline about the Giants offseason. I wanted to continue that. So because we don't have another topic to talk about until Coach gets on. So we might as well talk about it a little bit. Like what's amazing is how I did see the one episode. Like they really get in depth on that. I was surprised that they were willing to allow them to get like that deep of access into like the transactional part.
Right, like, because you're looking at it and it's like such a behind the scenes look. And obviously we're talking about the new Hard Knocks off season with the Giants, and they're really like, it started with like, the first like couple episodes about like, all right, the draft, like the combine process, and like really let a behind the scenes look at like the in-person interviews where you have Brian Daboll, the head coach, like literally grilling these guys on a board about, play calls and reading defenses and doing this and doing that. And then, the next episode, it transitions to salary cap stuff and numbers and literally the entire Giants, like, I guess not coaching staff, but like those guys that are involved in the salary cap stuff sitting around tables, like going back and forth about, all right, well, these are going to be the free agents. And if we want, like, if we want to sign this guy, it's going to be this much money, like really in-depth stuff that like you just have never seen. And like people don't even think about, just putting together the roster, because all we see is Sunday, right? Like all we see is plays and touchdowns and fumbles and all that other kind of stuff. Like these are the guys that like are responsible for putting those guys on the field. And here we are, like these guys are all excited when they sign a third string offensive tackle, and it's like this guy's gonna help us, and it's like
Yeah.
really, like you don't even hear about this guy, and like these guys get all juiced up about it. Like that was really cool just to see that behind the scenes look, because I don't think most people get that perspective or even understand that aspect of it.
Yeah, it's when I was an agent, that was like it was craziness when you would go back and forth. I can't tell you how many times I had. It's hard to explain to a player, but I had one of the player personnel guys from my area, like the area that he would cover wherever the player came from.
Right.
And he would be like, yeah, he's like, all right, I think we have a deal. I'm going back. I've had guys from the time they said they had a deal go back, and this is with the free agent guys, okay?
Yeah.
And they said, we decided to take so and so from Illinois. They come back to me, and you're like, wait a minute, we had a deal. It's like,
right,
like, yeah, because it's not until it's like they send it over to you.
It's like a done deal. Like it's got to get approved and all that kind of stuff, right? Like they were even talking about like Saquon's agent, like they got into depth like that. Like, all right, look, we're gonna let him hit the free agency market. Just like, do me a solid, and if you get an offer, come back to me with that offer, so that if we can match it, we'll do it. Or if we'll make something work, right? Like we'll try and do it. And, absolutely, yes, we'll come back with it. And then that happens, and the GM for the Giants is like, all right, so you're telling me if I offer him, this, and this, he'll be a Giant? And then the agent's like, well, kinda. It's like, dude, there's no like that
I
loyalty
used to stay
stuff,
on the phone
bro.
too. I used to
way.
like if they said it, I said I'll stay on the phone till you walk over. I learned to do that. Like I'll stay on the phone. If they tell me that they're getting off the phone, I'm like, if we're getting off the phone, then I know there's no deal.
It was just like crazy, right? And like you just like,
and then they're like, I promise you, I'll call you back in 30 seconds. It's like,
yeah.
It's
and
crazy.
Then like, this guy's sitting here and he's like, dude, I'm just waiting for, because obviously they did that deal with Brian Burns, right, from Carolina, and the GM for the Giants was with Carolina, and the head of the GM for Dan Morgan.
Yeah, Dan Morgan.
Like it's so crazy to see him going from like
linebacker coach at college, Vernon Hargraves. That was his.
Dude, like to see him go from like I grew up. He was a killer linebacker from Miami, and now he's like a GM guy.
Well, what's funny is I used to deal with him when he first got into the league, and he was like doing personnel. He was a guy that I used to go to. I can't remember. Maybe he was with Carolina. I don't remember who he was with, but like he was awesome, dude. He used to help me out, like. He was great. This is when he was like literally at the beginning, like he really
Right.
had like zero pull in the beginning. Like I mean,
Yep.
it's some pull, but like he would help me out, like navigate it all, like guys
Right.
and stuff. And then
Well, I guess him and the GM for the Giants, I think what's his name, Joe Shage or something like that. But I
oh,
think he.
yeah, yeah.
So those guys like have, I guess, kind of like ascended.
I
Yeah,
haven't
that's who the
looked at the
GM for the
personnel.
Giants is. That's the GM for the
I haven't looked at the
Giants.
personnel. There's a bunch of guys that are now the GMs that
Right, because
I used to,
they've risen the ranks, right? Like they've done
yeah,
their
I have
due
to look at
diligence.
that.
And this guy, obviously,
Paul,
him and
Ryan
Dable had a
Poles is the
relationship because
GM for
he was
Ri-
with Buffalo. So
Ryan
this is like
Poles.
where the whole thing came together.
We'll bring on Coach in a second here. Ryan Poles is the GM of the Bears, and Ryan Poles used to be the guy I used to deal with all the time at Kansas City. He was great. He was very reliable, and it's no coincidence. Same thing with Dan Moore. I'm not shocked because if those guys told you something, it was
It was it.
it. All right, let's bring on Coach here. Coach, what's going on?
Hey, sorry about that, guys. Little technical difficulties.
I
All
mean,
good,
So
Coach.
you have
Appreciate
a
you.
VR company and you can't get on StreamYard yet. You know what I mean?
I haven't used StreamYard since like I don't know. It was like when I was in sales, I used it. It was one of the tools I cycled through, but I think we went on to some other tool. I'm just kidding.
Uh, no, this thing is great for live streaming and it's been great for our podcast. So
It's good
what
to
was I
know.
gonna say? It's great having you on. We got Coach Doug Brady on. You got a nice a mustache and beard now. I almost didn't recognize you. Quarterback coach. I got to know Coach. I mean, we're talking maybe 2009, maybe 2010, maybe a year or
Earlier,
two later than that. But it was the
earlier.
San Diego events, right? We used to
Yeah.
run those camps down there, and you were the QB coach. Coach played football junior college and in New Mexico as a quarterback, and you might know one of his clients. The last name is Durkin, obviously a famous guy in Todd Durkin's son. Is famous trainer for many years, but now motivational speaker, and it's one of, I think it's someplace for Coach was saying plays for Davidson now, and among other clients, but one of the top quarterback coaches, on the West Coast. Welcome to the podcast, Coach Brady.
Thank you for having me, gentlemen. Appreciate
Coach,
it.
Coach, tell us the full background because I may have left a lot of stuff off. So playing background, coach background, and kind of how I remember when you transitioned to doing your own thing from a quarterback training standpoint. Why don't you talk about that kind of progression?
Yeah, so I played quarterback. I was an undersized quarterback, and I made up for it by being slow, straight ahead. So I just loved the position and wanted to challenge myself to be the guy, and would try to get information from anybody. I mean, shoot, if I met an NFL guy, I'd be like, hey, can we go throw with me at the park? I mean, I'd go meet Brian Sipe at the beach, to go throw. I'd bug the crap out of people. So I just had a passion to try to learn as much as I could when I was little. I played at Poway High School here in San Diego, most known for the wrestling program. They're one of the premier programs in the country. And then left there, played junior college ball, and was exposed to some different systems, different coaches, and then finished up at Mesa College in San Diego. Walked on to New Mexico State. Big Nebraska ties there. Tony Samuel had coached the defensive ends at Nebraska. Our quarterback coach played in Nebraska. Our offensive coordinator played in Nebraska. So bunch of Nebraska ties, and then left there, and then went to Menlo College where we ran the West Coast offense. I mean, Craig Walsh had been the AD there, Bill Walsh's son, father. I'm sorry, son. And so, I mean, we had the old West Coast offense. Guy McIntyre was the offensive line coach, and so we had exposure to that. And then when my last year in undergrad at Menlo, I worked for Stanford's football team, so did all the charting under Walt Harris. It was his last season there, and they put me in charge of all the visiting coaches. So I met a lot of coaches there, and decided like I didn't get a GA job there or an official coaching job there. I was a manager, so I decided to move back home to San Diego after I graduated. Started coaching at Poway High School, coached at Southwestern College in San Diego. Southeast Missouri State, where I pursued my master's, coached the quarterbacks. We're actually going into the Southeast Missouri Hall of Fame in September for our 2010 team,
It's awesome.
Yeah, just thinking back, like all the memories, all the friendships, relationships, all the hard work. That's gonna be really cool going back there. And then I went to Fort Lewis College in Durango, Colorado. Um, Lindenwood University Belleville, started a brand new football program. I was the offensive coordinator. I was the recruiting coordinator, the operations director. I did the janitorial service,
Yeah,
helped with, and I
served
did
lunch,
everything.
you tied cleats, you freaking
I
cleaned
did
out lockers. I mean, shit, whatever, right?
created the field. We had like that
Yeah.
candy cane turf. Like we did everything, like everything. I signed 122 kids as admissions counselor.
Oh,
It was an amazing experience. I mean, I look back now and I'm thankful for experiences like that because I feel like I just had to get in it and just sink and I was able to swim instead of sink type of deal. And I feel like that adds value for my business. And then I went to Central Methodist University in Fayette, Missouri, about 25 miles away from Mizzou, and then got out of full-time coaching at the end of 2014, moved back to San Diego, sold software for 5 years. And then my wife really encouraged me to pursue what I loved and I missed, right? You talk about Coach Durkin. I trained Luke in 2019 when I was selling software. He was my only client, and we did a film study. And so I took him through the protocols I would take my college quarterbacks through as far as like decision timing, footwork, throw. I'd grade some of his clips from the prior Friday night, and then we'd start looking at the next opponent. And I went through our organized thought process that I taught my QBs to just be able to repeat the process play after play, learn how to watch film. And Todd was really impressed by that. He got contacted by Tua's family, by Jalen Hurts' family. So he kept on calling me up. Hey, Doug, I want you to train these guys if they come. I'm like, what am I? I'm selling software. I'm like, what am I doing?
like I'm
This
not
is
even
my
in that world.
passion. This is what I'm good at. Like coaching QBs and being around football is what I love. And I said to myself, well, shoot, I ought to start a business. And my wife encouraged me to go out on my own and start it. And it was a perfect timing. It was January 2020. I'm kidding because it was right before COVID. So I started a brand new business right before COVID. And
Right.
so 5 years later, here I am and transitioned away from doing a ton of training, doing it more like select days. But I'm starting to sell virtual reality for Reps VR. UCLA uses it. We've met with some NFL teams recently. Really excited about the prospects for that because the great thing about that is I get to talk to quarterback coaches and offensive coordinators about how they communicate to their quarterbacks. And I think
Right.
as a trainer, I want to be able to make sure that QBs know how to think, wherever they're at, as far as like IQ wise, I want them to be able to think. So here I am today. Hopefully that was kind of gave you at least an understanding of my background. And do you have any other questions on the background? Want me to
No,
fill
no.
in anything else?
Nah, that was good.
I think it's interesting because I didn't realize as time passed, right? Because we stayed in touch, over all these years, here and there, and I didn't realize that you'd been at that many places from a college standpoint, and it's interesting because college football, especially, I think some of those were NAIA schools, right? And
D2, NAIA,
yeah,
FCS. Yep.
and college football has changed so much, and specifically for the quarterbacks from that time because of the transfer portal. What are some of the things that you've noticed that are different from when you were coaching college to now with respect to like recruiting quarterbacks and things you're advising them on?
Yeah, shoot. I mean, we could fill up a lot of time talking about that, I think.
All right,
The
good, go.
first, great question. You should do this more. I think the first thing that comes to mind is the handlers. The people that are reaching out and trying to advocate for kids. Right, wrong, or indifferent. I mean, some of these people have different ability levels to evaluate quarterbacks. Some of them done a really good job marketing. So some of the private coaches around the country, I think back when I was, coming up in the college ranks, that wasn't as big. It was, obviously it existed. George Whitfield got his coaching career started here in San Diego. And we actually used to hang out before, like during that time where you and I met, Dave.
Yep.
I was hanging with George Whitfield And
Yep.
it was before he had this big vision of what his business was going to be. And shoot, that thing blew up, right? And so he was big on the marketing piece. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. There's more people that are in that space. It's not, you could throw a rock in Southern California and hit a quarterback coach. And so
Guaranteed.
I think that's a big difference with like any position, really. I mean, you got to go in a lot of instances now. You're going through the handlers, the 7-on-7 coaches, their trainers. The best method, just to make sure I say this, the best method is to go through the high school coach, and to do it that way. I believe that you're going to be able to get the most value as a recruiter when you're looking for kids, because those high school coaches, they want to make sure that the recruiters come back to their campus, and that they don't give their kids a black mark because they're given an improper evaluation, on a kid. So that's the biggest thing. Obviously, it's more in vogue to transfer if things are difficult. If your quarterback room is too competitive for you, it's a lot easier to start scrolling the other rosters and thinking about that, instead of like watching more film or trying to better yourself, right? I think it's a lot easier for people to in their mind give themselves the option to go transfer. And I transferred. I mean, my reasons were I wasn't the prototype. They weren't banging on the door for me. I wanted to coach. I knew I wanted to be around the game. And so I transferred for some different reasons. Yeah, I wanted to play. But it wasn't, to me, it wasn't just a competitive reason why I transferred, right? So I think like that's changed, because it's so available now for people to just leave, where people would tough it out before, right? More. The NIL stuff, that's another. I mean, you have like the Jaden Rashada kid from Southern Cal, who ended up getting that huge mega deal from the Florida booster, and that hit the fan. And then he ended up at Arizona State, where his dad was a player. That was his dad's alma mater, so it's kind of like a natural place for him to pivot to after the Florida deal went south. And then he was there for a year. Had injuries, only played really in 2.5 games, and then now he's at Georgia. You know what I mean? Like
not a bad move, right? Like not a bad couple of situations to be in, right? You go from the Gators to Arizona State. Not a bad weather situation either.
No, not at all.
And he was a California kid, right? Was he?
Yeah, I know. I've spoken to the dad. We talk. We've tried to coordinate about times for me to work with Jaden. But more so
a hell
for
of
me.
A player.
Yeah, super talented. Felt like there are some things that I watched his games, watched every single play of his games at Arizona State, and obviously watched as much as I could of his high school. So I have my evaluation on him and what he needs to work on. So when we get that opportunity, I'm going to be prepared from my lens of being, I want to prepare these guys to go play ball and solve problems, right? Like my big deal, and I didn't get into quarterback training to go be that superstar rock star that's going to go be on ESPN, or go market the heck out of myself and have a better marketing plan than I have a development plan. I want to have the development plan. I care about that much more, right, wrong, or indifferent. That's just my mentality. That's what I want to do. So kind of gave you a lot there, but I think the fact that the NIL exists now is a lot different. The transfer portal, and then and other things I brought up. I think those are some of the big differences.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think in California too, where you are, you're one of the the few big states, Georgia, Florida, Texas, California, where and California maybe more than any other state, maybe maybe on par with Texas, but or maybe more quarterback wise. Like it's like quarterback training was invented out in California, So, and the 7-on-7 movement is probably biggest in California, meaning like there's a team like it's big now in Texas, obviously it's big now in Florida, it's big in even where we are, like we run a big club, pretty big club. But California was where it really like took off. And I remember, I remember hearing it when we were running the camps, and that was like a big transition away from us running a lot of camps out in California was that every kid wanted to play. All they wanted to do was play skill kids wanted to play 7-on-7 tournaments, and California kind of has been at the forefront of a lot of that stuff. Even with the line, the group up north, I can't remember coach's name, but I think they run the Polynesian All-Star game and all that kind of stuff. They run, a lot of big linemen, like quote unquote, like challenges too, whereas like 5-on-5 and stuff like that. Yeah. And California's been big on those kind of like partitions with 7-on-7. Talk about what that impact has been on California football. Obviously, there's mega powerhouses like Mater Dei, St. John Bosco. I'm sure, I don't know, is De La Salle still a powerhouse? I'm sure they are.
Yeah, not to the level they were, but I mean, they're still competing for championships.
Titles every year, right?
They're still a powerhouse for sure.
I mean, Mater Dei has been ranked in the top. They're the number 1 team in the country.
They're a college team, man.
Yeah, man. I look. It is. It's crazy, right? To see them ranked consistently number 1, 2, 3. Maybe they fall to a 4 or 5, but like they've been like the number 1 team in the country for the past God knows how many years.
What's the landscape like in high school football down in Southern California? I know San Diego's a little different than the kind of the greater Los Angeles area, but talk about what the landscape is like. Because we're on the East Coast. Private schools are just like on the West Coast are the big powerhouses.
Yeah.
But there's still pretty good football in the public school area. Sure. So I'm curious what the landscape is like out there.
Yeah, I mean, going back to your original question, as far as like the impact of the 7-on-7.
Yeah, sure.
It's become its own sport. I mean,
yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
Definitely.
It's like AAU basketball.
On steroids.
Yeah,
with less rules.
I know
that's possible.
It could definitely use some more structure for sure. But when I was getting out of college football, I told myself, like, I don't know if that feedback's from me. It's not from me, is it? Anyways, I told myself I'm not going to invest as much time on 7-on-7 to get a team ready, right? Like that was my thought process. And so when I first got back and I started coaching high school football when I was selling software, my mindset was like, I wasn't a big fan of 7-on-7. I felt like it created bad habits. But I've seen what it's done for kids, where these 7-on-7 coaches that have been doing it for a while, they develop relationships with college coaches, and they create another avenue for kids to be able to get opportunities or to go visit a campus where their high school coach isn't going to, is teaching a subject and it's got a family, and they're more staying like local. They're not taking kids to go to U of A or to University of Oregon or to Wazoo or wherever for a 7-on-7 tourney, where they also get to visit the campus and meet the coaches, right? So I think it's created exposure for a lot of kids. It's created pipelines to universities that didn't exist before, right? So I think there's a ton of value and a ton of positives with it. And I know, like here in San Diego, we have Dream Chasers that's run by Jason Carter, former Texas A&M player that played for the Minnesota Vikings, and he's built up a monster, Dream Chasers, and they put a bunch of kids out. Makasi, run by Verlaine Batofi here in San Diego. Verlaine has built another monster. So those are like two competing entities, but like kids from all over the county are part of those 7-on-7 teams. And there's some negative residuals that happen from that, where kids end up, enrolling at those schools that those guys coach at, right?
It happens to be that way. That's part of it, right? That's part of it, no matter what. Like it's.
But like I think of those kids, a lot of those kids, some of them like grow up in neighborhoods where there's a lot of stuff going on that are like there's a lot of negative things going on in their neighborhood, and those gentlemen have created an opportunity for kids to like really get scholarships, right, where that didn't exist before. And so like I don't want to be super long-winded in answering your question, but like this 7-on-7 as enhanced ball. I mean, quarterbacks are able to get to their third and fourth reads a lot better than they were in the past, and maybe understand like where everyone's at in the pass game. Receivers are able to operate versus man-to-man coverage a lot better than they were in the past because there's more repetitions. You're able to see these drop 8 defenses that people do drop 8 in real games. I mean, shoot, I was at Carlsbad the last 2 years. We played Inglewood, where Julian Stain was Carlsbad. He's at Ohio State now. We played Inglewood. They dropped 9, probably 5 snaps.
I mean, Coach, I think that's like part of the game now that we've seen, right? We've seen an evolution into, spread offenses, and everybody, that wasn't the thing back in the day. Like, not everybody went 4 wide or empty sets. That wasn't the norm. And now I think just the evolution of football has really kind of brought that along, where now everybody's chucking it around, and now defensive coordinators are saying, look, man, we gotta, like, that might be an option for us. Maybe we need to drop 8 or 9, or whereas in the past it was, hey, let's pack the box with 10 guys and stop the run because everybody ran the ball. So I think it's something that's definitely, I think that alone with offenses kind of evolving into the openness and the spread offenses and all that kind of stuff has really brought about, more of a, hey, 7-on-7 can help us rather than not help us,
For sure. It's just like anything, you're like, there's going to be value. There's going to be some that's going to hurt you. So it's your job as a coach to make sure when you get the pads on, your quarterbacks understand how to like navigate the pocket. Like when I'm training, I'm always talking about, if I'm a quarterback and I have a half slide, half man protection, the back's inserting to the man side, my escape route's typically going to be that man side. Like we talk about that on the field when we're training. Like I want them thinking about that.
Yeah.
In the training environment and in the game, it's more like reactionary, right? But like that's the coach's job to make sure that they go train the bad habits that were created. Like the R4 system, Dubmatics has got like everything timed out, like the rhythm, read, rush, release throws, on a time clock. So going back to original question, 7-on-7 has definitely helped develop. Like comparing California to Texas, comparing any state to Texas is really unfair from the standpoint that like the state of Texas, high school football coaches are really respected, by administrators across the state. It's a real profession there, right?
Yes.
Where you don't just go on campus and you're like, hey, I'm a walk-on coach. I work at UPS during the day. Or I'm a cook.
It's not a hobby.
It's not a hobby. Like these people are professionals, right? And so naturally, what's the product going to be in the state of Texas? You're going to have kids that are more ready and prepared because the people preparing them, right? So like there's a lot of walk-on coaches in California, except for the private schools, or maybe like a really good public school, even Carlsbad, where we've had a lot. I'm not there anymore. I live a little further south here in San Diego. So, but at Carlsbad, there was only one coach on campus the last 5 years. That's crazy.
Right.
Now, Coach Thad McNeil there does an exceptional job making sure he stays in touch with everybody that's involved in the program. And he's really good about setting the plan and everybody knows the plan. So I think he's an outlier, right?
He's not the norm.
He's not the norm, right? But like that's what you have in California. You have instances where like when the furloughs happened in 2008 and they started cutting jobs, what jobs did they cut? They cut PE jobs.
100%.
Right. So like that's impacted the programs of the sports programs here. And so I think like the 7-on-7 coaches and the personal trainers, I think that they filled the gap in a lot of ways. Right. So
that's happening. That's happening in the Northeast now too. So that's what's going on a lot more now here. Obviously the private schools that are powerhouse, they're able to do a little more, but in the public schools, it's kind of like, there's certain schools that do have the ability to really do some great things. But for the most part, that's kind of what's going on here now. Like coaches are filling like trainers, strength coaches, speed coaches, quarterback coaches, position coaches, a 7-on-7 club. They're filling in the gaps because they don't allow the coaches to work with them as much year round. It's one of the funny, interesting things about when me and Derek always talk about rules, And they keep, they have all these rules where you can't work with your kids, and I'm sure California has some rules like that too.
100% dead period, and
Yep.
Yep.
But
No
all
contact
that does,
and this or that.
it's great for all. I'm in, private business. Obviously, you are too. It's great, for trainers and coaches and 707 clubs, which I run. But it's interesting that the thing that they thought they were doing, like administrators at the highest levels, is all they were doing. They were like, oh, well, we're going to reduce the outside influence. No, actually, you increase the outside when you restrict.
Correct.
When you restrict what the coaches can do, you now force more of an outside influence. And like, let's say, if New Jersey and California were like Texas, well, we would know, hey, we could go get paid being a high school coach and being a coach. So you may not have to be a quarterback trainer, full time, right? You could do that as a part-time gig, what I mean, fill gaps, right? But but now it's a full-time business because of the fact that we're sure. So I always find that interesting, is that like the more you're trying to limit a high school coach cheating, quote unquote, for the 4 or 5 guys that really do cheat every year, right? You're limiting the whole entire group, right? And then there are guys that do that will cheat. There's always going to be guys that'll cheat to the end of time. But you're making rules around the 4 or 5 guys that will cheat versus the 95% that do everything right, which I think is pretty funny. But it's really interesting. Talk about a little bit what as far as like what you're seeing in quarterbacks now that you have to fix, things that like themes that you're trying to work on to get quarterbacks to improve, their technique or whatever it is you think they're continuing to need to improve. What are some of the things you're seeing there?
Well, the number one thing is IQ. Just understanding why you run a play. I think anytime you install a play as a coach, you ought to teach them the play caller's intent.
Right? Why am I calling this? What am I looking to get out of this? And this is why I'm calling it.
Yeah. And I think, when you think of the spread and you think of the proliferation of, no huddle offenses and going fast.
Yep. Tempo.
Obviously that's a tactic, that's a strategy.
Right.
And part of that strategy, you're cutting out the processing ability of the quarterback because you're trying to give them answers, right? Or you're trying to, within the call, you're telling them exactly where to go with the football. So I think football IQ, and if it helps you win games, at the end of the day, who am I to say that's the wrong way to go? And because your job is to win games, and so
that's it.
I'm trying to answer the question the best way I know how, and that's where my mind goes, right? Because being a college coach, and before I started really being a trainer, because I was doing training when we first met, Dave, Coach Schuman. I was determining, do I want to go be a trainer or want to be part of a team? I decided I love the team aspect. I want to be part of a team. I didn't want to end up being a trainer. But I think it's a football IQ, because that's what every single session I want to talk about. Like, why do we take this drop? Hey, you might want to take a replace step instead of a crossover step, because you got to get this ball out on time, because you're throwing this because there's free access to corners off. And we're running this concept versus this type of quarters because it impacts the safety that's pattern matching number 2 first. And we're going to try to run a route underneath it and pull that guy high. And then we play fake with it so we can get the hook curl player, or the person that's responsible for number 2 or relating to number 3. I try to talk to them about that stuff. And for some of them, it's way over their head. And like,
oh my God.
That's not their fault. It's not their fault.
They've never been coached that way, or they've never been exposed to that type of knowledge, or, they've been told, hey man, you just, get the snap and you're throwing here. Right. And if that's not there, just tuck it and go. Right. So the overall, I think that the football IQ aspect of it, and like you said, it's over some guys' heads. And look, some of those guys can dial it back and sort of get a little bit of it. But the great ones are the ones that understand that stuff, or they want to understand that stuff.
And that's I think what separates
the good from the great, right?
And that's what I want to be around, Coach. I mean, I've just got to the point where, one thing Todd Durkin, when I decided I was going to start this business, we met and I saw the notes from it. And I think this is a good lesson from anything. Like, you go speak to somebody about business, about marketing, about whatever you're going to do to try to improve your business or do something well. He
Yep.
told me the nicher, the richer.
Yeah. You got to have
And
a niche. I mean,
and
listen, the school I'm at now, he's an alumni of. He just was here he was here 2 weeks ago speaking to the team, right? And he's that high energy, high octane guy, and that's kind of like what, like, me personally, I'll flock to, right? Like, show me a guy that's passionate about what they do, and they're willing to sell their soul to put that out there and kind of run with it. Good, bad, or different, like anybody who's all into me, I think that's what you have to be. And I think the quarterback position alone, like, you have to be all in every facet of it if you want to be great.
Amen. And Todd is like that all the time. And
Yeah.
he's one of the best humans I know. He went to my wedding. I just absolutely love the Durkins.
Great dude.
So that's awesome. You have a connection with them. So that would be the biggest thing. And then the next thing would be footwork. Being able to understanding, like, playing with a good base. Most kids have played basketball to some degree. And you think about playing defense in basketball, you don't want to cross over your feet. I'm not a basketball guy, but I know that you want to keep a good base and keep in front of the person, right? I mean, that's generally a thing. So when you're a quarterback operating in the pocket, you want to keep a good base, feet outside the hips. And I think a lot of them lose their base. And it's about getting to that base as quick as possible to deliver the ball, because it's not when you want to throw the ball, it's when you need to throw the ball. You might
That's
have a
great.
play where they're giving you grass to the sideline right now. Boom, you got to take it. They're giving you the bubble throw because they're leveraging you from inside out, right? And they're playing a middle field safety, right? And then they're going to try to cancel out every gap, and that's why you throw a bubble, right? Or what have you need, or you need to be able to let the play develop versus Tampa 2 on a third and 9. Right, where you're going to throw it over the hook curl player on a deep dagger route, and you got to stay alive. You got to do everything to stay alive, but keep your base. So I try to teach from that standpoint. I feel like a lot of kids don't have that great base, and they don't also, like, when I ask them about their footwork, because we talked about this already, like filling a gap. For me, I don't want to step on toes. I want to fill gaps that exist, right? With players in their programs, because I want to go support the coaches that are doing the work, because I'm always going to consider myself an ally to coaches. I'm going to consider myself an ally to parents and kids. So just trying to work that whole deal, and so I want to fill gaps and not step on toes. I want to make sure I'm using the language that their coach uses. Some of them can't really answer and say, "Hey, I need to use this footwork." And I think that's a problem. Just understanding the footwork you're supposed to use. So IQ, maintaining a good base, and then the footwork. As far as the throwing mechanics go, I was talking to a current NFL quarterback coach like the other day, and he was talking about not messing with the throwing motion. And I've been diving into the research on it. I've been diving in, looking anecdotally at other people's videos and talking to folks. I think if you could create efficiencies with the motion, and you could show the person on film, like, hey, I could see that you're really getting your elbow up high because you're probably taught that. You're probably given the acronym hammer the nail on the wall, or your elbow needs to be above the AC joint so you don't have any shoulder impingement. I've heard all the different reasons of why you want that elbow high, but that's not the natural arm slot for everybody. I think if you have a huge shoulder tilt and your body's leaning out and you have pelvic tilt, I don't think that that's the most efficient way to throw the ball. And so your arm slot might need to be more naturally 3/4. And so if I'm able to show them that, and there's a drill I do where I just have them as a right-handed quarterback sprint full speed to their left where they're not able to attack. And then I film from where they throw it at. So like I'm maybe 20 yards away from them. They start sprinting. And then as soon as they throw, that's when I'm right behind them. And I'm filming it, and I can see their arm slot. To me, that's their natural arm slot.
So I have a quick question about that. That's really interesting because, and you see a lot more of the 3/4 stuff. One of the things that, like, I've noticed when guys throw with their elbow below, right, or in this area here, what happens is, where you going? Okay. There's a future quarterback for you if we ever move to the West Coast, my son.
There we go.
He plays
Hey
7 on
man,
7
I went
already.
to a Yankee game in April, and I want to go back to New York City.
Okay, good. You come here. You come here. I'll put him with you.
Wow, that's a rarity. Not many people saying that nowadays, that's for sure. But like, you're welcome to come anytime. Come on.
So my question is this. So when I see the elbow drop like this, sometimes the ball when it comes out, right? And I'm curious what the correction is, because if they have that 3/4 or below the shoulder with the elbow, sometimes the nose of the ball will come up, right? Instead of coming back when it's up a little bit higher, when elbows up a little bit higher and they rotate their hips properly and extend properly, the ball comes out with that natural look, right? Where roll turns over and everything. But when it's down here, if they don't get great hand control on it, it always goes up and then it sails a little bit, right? Like, and so that's one of the things that I always have. I mean, personally, tried to always like get them to have their elbow at least somewhat towards even at least, because of the fact that nose of the ball, because you see over and over again. What is the correction? And maybe it's extension of the arm, but what is the correction? If they're throwing like 3/4 or do throw with their elbow down a little bit, that's more their natural motion, like a baseball pitcher kind of thing. What is kind of or a shortstop, right? When he's throwing from short, like Patrick Mahomes was a shortstop, right? So what is the correction from getting that ball to sail, from sailing with the nose starting to go up and then it doesn't come down efficiently?
Can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you good.
Yeah.
You guys got me?
Yep.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
We can hear you.
You guys got me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. So wrist position. You want to be able to have a good wrist position when you release the football. Wherever your arm is extended out to, right? If it's away from your body, you want to be able to get the wrist. It doesn't need to be a firm C. I know that was something that, we've taught quarterback coaches have taught through the years. It could be closer to a U, but you want to have that wrist position set. And then one of the things that I really try to emphasize is when we do like our wrist ignition drill is with my index finger, I want to pretend like I'm swiping your nose, right? So I get pronation, right? Yeah. So I want the wrist to be in a good position, because there's 4 phases of the throw, and I can nerd out and talk to you about every body part: adduction, abduction of the shoulder, extension, flexion, supination, pronation, all those things. That I have a deeper discussion on that. And I actually have an app where I talk through all that and have all my drills on there. It's on my website, Brady Performance website, where people can go if they want to take a look at that. But the wrist position is key. And when we do that wrist ignition drill, I just say, pretend like you're swiping their nose, right? Flex the forearm on the finish, right? And then if we ever have, and we start off, we do a pretty extensive warm up where we're warming up every piece of the body. And we do a drill called soft toss. And I read it in Phil Simms' book when I was a kid. And there was a drill that he did just to really focus on the timing and sequencing and be able to be under control as that ball came off his hand. Because if you can't throw the ball soft with full range of motion, probably can't throw the ball that well when you're going full speed, right? So we do that drill, and if the ball's flailing, I talk about, okay, wrist position, and then I pull it back. Then we go to the wrist ignition drill. If I feel like they're having issues with the ball flight and the tip of the ball is flailing, then we do crossbar drill, where we essentially integrate the wrist ignition drill, where now we're throwing over a crossbar to a target, right? And then I'll even use the coaching point they use in basketball, like grab the cookie off the tray. We'll talk about that where we get pronation, that index finger. I want to be able to extend and snap, flex the forearm on the finish. So those are some of the things. And the way that I coach, I use drills as part of the tool belt, right? If you're having an issue with ball flight, that tip of the ball is going up, then I'll say, hey, Dave, wrist position, wrist position. What's the drill you go to? And we'll literally get a couple reps of the wrist ignition drill to try to fix that. Because even if my arm's extended, like I talked about, my elbow's low, that wrist position needs to be in a good spot, because I've got film of guys having to throw around people, right? It shows up on film. You throw a shallow cross and over the ball route. You've got some type of route that's going to be thrown inside the hash marks, and there's a large body in front of you. You can't extend over the top of him, right?
Yep.
You've got to be able to throw with the 3/4 delivery. And so
Correct.
it shows up in games. Sometimes you got to extend and get over the top of somebody.
Right.
Right. There's a free runner at you and you got a running back in the flat, or you got a shallow cross, or you got something that's going to be in your vision. You got to be able to extend high over the top of that person. So we got to be able to do both. But we really emphasize the wrist position. So
That's really, really, really interesting stuff. That's a fantastic nugget, because it's in 2014 I had a quarterback that went to Villanova that played for me, and he was the guy. It was the first guy I realized, like, you know what, like, whatever you got to do to get the ball. Like, he would throw the bubble screen if you rushed your defensive end and just attacked him up the field and try to disrupt it. He would love to throw. He would literally throw it sidearm and he'd get it around, and it would look beautiful. I mean, it would just come right out, boom, he hit him, and now they had one less defender, you know what I mean, out there chasing, right?
Yep.
So that's what they would try to do, and he would throw with all these different arm angles, and so I was curious about that, because he was always able to have good control. He had a very good quarterback coach. He worked with I don't know if you know Medee Williams, but Medee Williams on the East Coast. He does a lot of quarterbacks in North Jersey, and he he helped him with all those different things, because when he was a sophomore, he used to get the ball swatted down sometimes, and then all of a sudden the next year he came in and there was no throw he couldn't make, and he was a very good athlete too. So that he could do a lot of different things. But it was really interesting, because then you could run RPOs with him, because now he could throw from any arm angle, and it didn't matter where you were rushing him. He could get rid of the ball. And so it's really interesting but I never knew, even though I was coaching him, I never knew exactly, how he was able to do that. Right. I knew the footwork, I knew the base, I knew the rotation, the hips, and all that kind of stuff. And to make sure his feet were in the right, but he always, you could correct his feet, but and all the stuff like that. Like, sometimes he'd make a mistake, but he still always had I guess he had his wrist in the right position to be able to get rid of the ball. And that's so interesting. I honestly, I never really understood that until just now. What as far as, so you see, like, quarterback coaches, this is one of the hardest thing for parents. Okay. And in New Jersey, I wish this was more of a prevalent problem, where we had more, there's a good amount of pretty good quarterback coaches in North Jersey, where I'm originally from. Where we are down the shore, they're starting to get some quarterback coaches, but not like, you'd like to have more choices. You know what I mean?
We're lacking, that's for sure.
Every kid's different, and some work well with different guys. It's not even just the mechanics, but there's some coaching styles.
Yeah, just the delivery of everything, and just their whole, just how they go about it.
Yeah, exactly. What is it like when a parent comes to you, like, and you're explaining, hey, if you come to me, this is what do you think parents should be asking if they're going to work with a quarterback coach
Great question.
to get development?
That's a phenomenal question. Shoot. I actually have a blog on my website about it. I should probably refresh my memory on it, but because my business model is changing, right? It's changed to where I'm doing this more part-time now. Unfortunately, I wish I could just be on the field all day. But I think they need to understand how the quarterback coach has helped other kids. What have they done for other kids? Like, what are some tangible improvements that kids have made under their tutelage? How did that coach maybe connect them with the university that the kid's at? How did he get them ready for the university? What type of relationship did they have from that standpoint? So I would ask those types of questions. Maybe you can get to it if somebody's giving you canned responses. I think asking behavioral questions, like, give me a scenario where you know, like something went wrong and then you ended up fixing it with the kid, or like he had like a meltdown and you helped him. Because I, you know, also want, you know, I think a quarterback coach needs to be part psychologist as well and
Right.
help
Yeah,
that kid,
100%. It's like being a
right? Like,
personal trainer.
yeah. So I think, you know, their track record, you know, how they've helped, you know, maybe even their resume, like what have they done in their career leading up to that point? You know, I think those are the biggest things. And, you know, I know some parents had asked me, you know, hey, I want homework assignments for my kids.
Oof.
And, y- and that's tough sometimes, because when you have a lot of kids you're working with, like giving them specific homework assignments could be cumbersome. And then you're spending a lot of time on that kid beyond the hour that they paid for as well.
Right.
And you know what
Right.
I mean? It's like, if you're trying to run a business, you can't just give away everything for free. I mean, there's got to, obviously, if you have a nonprofit component, you know, or if you have scholarship dollars, or if you raise money, or if, hey, you're just going to you're going to do some pro bono work, then great. But, you know, I know some people have asked that, and that was important to them. I've gotten to
Interesting.
the point now where, you know, like my price point is just where it's at. It's much higher than it was before, just because I'm only available really on Fridays during the summer,
Right.
because we've got 3 kids. I drove them to surf camp this morning, and then my wife gives me my task list on what I need to do.
A happy wife,
And
happy life. We know that's got to
yeah,
take precedent for damn sure.
and she runs 3 businesses. My wife's crazy,
Holy.
but like in a good way. She's nuts, man. She's got her PhD from USC.
Oh, that's
I'll
amazing.
kick my coverage. I was a good recruiter. That's why I was recruiting
Good
coordinator
job, man.
twice.
Hey, that's
But
important,
anyways,
right?
like, and I digress. So yeah, I think, you know, just understanding where the guy came from, where the coaches come from, how they've helped develop tangibly, give some tangible reasons of how they developed them well. And then what other offerings that particular person's looking for. I don't think you just want to just pick anybody because they have a great website, or you want to get to know the person as well.
Hmm.
So
Really
that's
interesting
that's
stuff.
my thought on that.
Before I let you go, talk to me a little bit more about the VR stuff you're doing. You know what that entails. Like, can I get it? Can I get myself a pair of
Sorry,
VR goggles?
this I might try to move to another part of the house.
Okay. Can you hear me? Can
Can
you
you
hear
guys
me or
still hear
no?
me?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
you're
can hear,
good. We can hear you.
we can hear you good. It might be you can't hear us. Maybe.
Let me move to another part of the house. Sorry.
Oh, that's
No, you're
okay.
good. You're good. I think that's incredible, actually, to be honest with you. Like, you think about what some of our guys, right, that have looked for or asked us, Dave, right, about that one on one training, right? Like, I don't know if it's because they're, we have good track records or kind of people kind of know who we are, right? But like, you're not hearing some of these guys ask some of those questions that maybe they should be asking, right? When they're going to these trainers,
Yeah.
or, it's just like, oh, well, so and so said that you're a QB trainer. Like, all right, now I'm going to come and do it. And it's like, well, is he really a QB trainer that's have some, there's some clout to it, or is it just some guy that, he thinks he's pretty good at playing Madden, right? Like, I think that's, you really should do your homework as a parent and
Yes.
not just kind of dive into it just because it's there.
Yeah,
No.
you might get trained. You might. I don't want to start saying negative things about people. You know, like some of the coaches out in the space.
No, but we all know those
Well,
people that are out there.
and I have a son that's a quarterback. So, like, and like I said, we already played like 7-on-7 tournament. And there's a guy that actually he's one of our coaches for our older. He coaches. He's an offensive coordinator, and he coaches our older kids as well. That I put him with, from time to time, like, once in a while, just. But I'm actually pretty careful with it because I don't want like I'll work with him most of the time just so he could just feel free to to throw, like just to throw, right? And
Yeah,
then I can fix some of the basic stuff because they're young anyway, and that's all he can throw, but he's young, and doing anything beyond the basic stuff is hard for kids at that age to really comprehend. Not but he can make the corrections on things, and I think you're 100% right. Like the the psychology of the quarterback position. I think that's a like even the quarterback coach, like how he fits with that individual, and when something goes wrong, I like it's when things are going good, that's easy, right? But
Yeah.
something goes wrong, he plays in a big game, and he doesn't do as well as he thought he should have did, right? You know what I mean? And he can't figure out why. Like, I've done all this training, and then all of a sudden, the biggest game of the year, I struggled, right? Well, it really usually has more to do with between the years than it does,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
what they,
The 6 inches. Yep.
and obviously the parents, if they don't have a real understanding of what the quarterback coach is doing, or the player has an understanding and can relate it to the parents, then the first natural instinct is to switch quarterback coaches, which I think is like, I see kids going to like literally a different quarterback coach every single week. Like, how is that benefit? That doesn't seem to me to be beneficial, because I could see if you work with a different guy once in a while for a change up of something. I understand that. But
Sure.
just to hear something different. But like, to go to a different guy every single week almost seems to me to be confusing. Like, you have to explain to the kid, hey, this is just so we get a little invigoration, refresher, a change of pace, but not on a consistent basis. Going to a different guy all the time and trying to figure out that rotation of quarterbacks, because you're not gonna. Well, all you end up doing is confusing kid, because one guy says this little tidbit and this guy says this little tidbit, and they might be all communicating the same thing, right? But they have a different way of communicating. And when a coach has a different way of communicating, that's where confusion lies in for an athlete. Like, I could say, like, for example, when you run offensive plays, for many years when I used to run sweeping, we used to call Sweden, right? Well, someone else might call it something else, right? Yeah. So it's a different term. Well, if you went to a different offense every week and heard the same play, the sweep play, in 5 different terms, it's going to be pretty confusing for you as a player. And I think about it the same way when you go to trainers, just trainer of the moment, and you get all, you need to have some consistency with it. But I digress. My main question, you can answer that if you want, but I wanted to know more about the VR thing, because I find that fascinating too as well. So, Joe, answer anything you want from the 2 things I spoke about.
Yeah. No, this you're getting me thinking.
Oh, yeah, you're back.
You guys hear me okay?
Good.
Yeah, you're good.
I thought I moved to a spot that's a little bit better. We kind of live in an area where there's not as many towers, and so we have everything like through cellular or the Wi-Fi. So my apologies on that.
No, you're good.
You had talked about parents and their involvement in the choosing a quarterback coach, and it got me thinking about a recent conversation I had with the Division I offensive coordinator, and I asked him point blank. I was at a coach's clinic, and I asked him, like, how do you guys eval quarterbacks? And I was asking multiple questions, but one of the things that really stuck with me is when the kid is on a visit, he is evaluating the parents.
Oh.
He's evaluating the questions they ask. He's evaluating where they're answering the questions for the kid.
What they're wearing.
Like everything. He's evaluating the parents. Parents need to know that. Like, don't screw your kid over.
It's literally, Coach, it's literally one of the things, like, I just posted a video about it like a couple days ago, because I had an athlete go to a school, and like one of the coaches actually came back to me and said, like, hey, like, this seems like he's going to be a hell of a player, but I just can't do it with the parents. Like, it's just not going to happen. I'm not dealing with that for the next however many years. So I try and inform my parents as much as possible. Like, you're part of this process.
100%.
Like, you're getting recruited just like your kids getting recruited. So, you better, like, get yourself to either learn how to do it or you know what I mean, or just be aware of, like, the way you're answering things, the way you're conducting yourself. Your kid may be a 5-star kid, but certain people, like, if it's not the right fit, like, I'm not dealing with that.
Amen. I mean, it goes back to like that 95% of your time is spent on 5% of your team. Right?
Absolutely.
Where it's like you want to make sure that margin is smaller, where you got as many people that are self-sufficient on their team, right? So it got me thinking about that. And another thing that I would do when I first started the business, I came from selling software where it was like all about you do a discovery call with somebody. If I meet you and you're a subcontractor on the East Coast, because I sold the East Coast, that was tough selling to New Yorkers. That was really difficult. It definitely helped me a ton. But like you try to eliminate people so you don't waste time trying to sell to people that aren't going to be a good fit, because they're going to end up churning and not using your product over time. Even if you like somehow sell it to them, you're like, this is not a good fit, and it, right? And so, for me as a coach, I also try to qualify or disqualify parents and kids, not from like the standpoint to be a jerk. Like I never wanted to put a kid down, never wanted to try to disrespect parents in the way that they're parenting and like navigating this world and this life, which is freaking crazy. Obviously, I don't want to go
Right.
into
They're
a
doing
tangent
their
on that.
best, it. Like,
They're doing their
everybody's
best.
trying.
And like, what's more personal than your dang kids? Like I get that, I understand that, but I try to let them know, like, I don't want to babysit. This isn't a babysitting service. This is a premium service, and this is for people who want to be here. And and I've explained that to some people in the past. They're like, well, they're probably thinking about their kids. I'm like, well, you're a jerk, because I try to have to push my kids out of the car, and so that was part of my process early on. And it's right, wrong, or indifferent. That was my thought process. I want to be able to qualify the people that were the right fit for me, because I want to be able to have a very, very transparent conversation and be able to tell you whether I think your kid is not going to be beyond a D3 kid.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with being a
Unfortunately,
D3 kid.
yeah.
No, I know, but like, I just feel like it's going to do more harm. I remember there's a
And
dad here in San Diego.
Quarterback parents are different.
Are going to be
they're like
the
pickers.
toughest too, to explain that too. That they're going to be the
I
toughest.
could look at a kid and I could say that kid's an FBS kid. That kid's that kid is an FCS kid. He's a Division II, and some people don't understand how good Division II football is.
They don't.
Coach.
They just look at numbers. 1, 2. They look at what they see on CBS.
Never gone to a game.
That's it.
Never gone to a game.
No.
Even NAIA, like some of those kids who get smoked versus some of the NAIA programs I coach against.
Like,
they don't understand.
In college, man, like, it doesn't matter what level, you're already a bar above others.
Yeah.
People have no idea. They don't understand the process that, like, hey, this guy might have been out of West Virginia and just fell down through it and now he's at a Division II school, Division III school. Because Division III is a lot bigger in our area than an NAIA or even a JUCO, right? Like, there's not many even JUCOs out here. But, I just think like they just see a level and they see majority of what they see on social media about, 5-star, 4-star, big time programs. They think that's what it has to be. And really, like, there are so many other opportunities for those guys to play at these other levels.
I think they lack, I think the big thing too is they lack awareness of the actual athletic ability of the guys at the FCS and FBS level in particular, meaning
100%
scholarship in particular, meaning if I'm giving you money, okay, forget about the NAL. The NAL guys are at a whole different level. Let's be honest, right?
Yeah.
So guys are actually really getting NAL, not 10% off my food,
protein shakes,
my DoorDash, you get 10%.
Protein,
not that, like actually getting cash in hand from a school. But those guys are at a different level from the guys that are at a different level, right? So if someone's giving you a college scholarship, and that could be at Division II, because there are 22 whatever 22
48 for fully funded,
right?
And we've had some of those guys on, like from St. Anne's and whatnot.
But a fully funded scholarship, if someone's giving you a fully funded scholarship, meaning you don't have to pay for books, you don't have to pay for housing, you don't have to pay for your school, okay? And I want to be specific on this. I'm not talking about a grant from the university for academics. I'm talking literally athletic scholarship that covers the whole things. Those guys are athletically. I'm not saying that, because you were walk-on, right? And I think Coach D was walk-on initially at FCS. Not that walk-ons don't beat out guys to have scholarships. They do, okay? But to get a scholarship offered to you, full ride, true football athletic scholarship, those guys athletically are extremely high level. And people make the mistake on this a lot with FCS and FBS. They get it confused because a kid could be a great football player, like really, really good. Like, I don't know, 6 foot, 195-pound linebacker, right? Really, really good, like 120 tackles, you know what I mean? And they're like, how come he doesn't get a Division I scholarship? And I said, well, the guy that's getting a Division I scholarship is not just, he's 6'2", maybe 210. Okay. But he also runs the 40 at 4.65, right? Or 4.60. Like he could jump, 30 plus inches in the vertical, as a linebacker. Right. So that's the things that they mistake. And it goes for quarterbacks too. Oh, my kid throws the ball really well. And I've seen a lot of guys that throw the ball really well that are the right height and size, but there's more to it than that. Like, can you make a play when it's needed to be made? Can you make a play with your feet? So, in college, that's the reality a lot of times. Can you make a play with your feet? Do you have the athletic ability to do that? Can you make a play with your feet and then make a throw and put it on put it on a rope, right? Like, because there are guys that can stand in the pocket and move, or a stand in the pocket and throw, or a designed rollout and throw, but that's not the same as guys in your face move really quickly to the right or left,
Right.
and then throw a dime, right? And that's different, right? And so
Yeah.
those are the things that I think parents have the hardest time understanding. Players obviously naturally would have if I'm a really good high school player and I'm better than XYZ, who, I feel like I'm a better high school football player than XYZ who's getting a scholarship and I'm not. And I might say to myself, what's going on here? That's natural as a high school player. But the parents have to understand the level of athleticism. Like Kyler, I always bring Kyler Murray up because people always want to say 5'9" quarterback, right? It can be done. I tell the story because Derek's heard it 90 times, so he's probably tired of it by now. But Kyler, the coaches called me up at our Dallas camp, and he was like 5'5" as like a freshman in high school. And they said, this kid is unbelievable. He ended up being like 5'9", but they said this kid is unbelievable. Can run, throw, can make any throw. Like he's unbelievable. And I said, well, what does unbelievable mean? They said, the best person we've ever seen in all the years of doing this, ever. So that's how a 5'9" quarterback is an opportunity to get a Division I scholarship and then eventually win the Heisman, and be a pro. Literally the best ever, right? But not that there aren't guys that go as walk-ons. And I think the great example is there are guys that go as walk-ons and earn starting jobs at college programs and become really good college players, and they invested in themselves. They got better. Maybe they weren't, quote unquote, that athlete, but they got to be that kind of an athlete through hard work to a level where their football skills took over. And I think that's an interesting thing that parents, and an important thing that parents don't. It's so hard to see past what your kid can do. It's so hard.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible. It really is. It's almost impossible. You need that college coach or the high school coach to kind of paint the picture for you, because it's hard for you to paint it yourself. And that's understandable. It's your kid. You have 3 kids, it's hard. You love your kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. You said it. You said it really well. I think benchmarking, understanding. I've gone on some of my lives and I've said to people, look at the list of schools that you want to go to and benchmark the height and weight and some of the measurables of the people in that position room, and like look at and compare it to yours, and then look at their high school film and do an honest comparison. Now, yeah, you and I both know, like there's outliers, like you mentioned with Kyler. Talking to people that been part of really good NFL organizations, like their criteria for selecting players is different. Where they have like a grit scale, and they grade players based off of their ability to overcome adversity and all these different criteria, right? Where they value that more than the other pieces. So I don't want to get off on a major tangent there, but like
Yeah.
there's way that you can set up criteria there as an evaluator. But yeah, those people that are at that level, they're upper echelon. They've got the DNA in a lot of instances. I wasn't going to get a Division I scholarship because of my size, and but when I went there, I believed I belonged. And when I played, the ball moved. We moved the ball. We moved the chains because I learned the offense. And I ended up transferring out of there, which I sometimes kick myself in the rear. But I just wasn't going to get a scholarship there. Right, wrong, or indifferent. I don't know. People have an opinion on me saying that, but it's just the truth. Maybe I would have earned one over time. But anyways, yeah. So there's a lot there to kind of unpack still. I want to make sure I bring up the VR. You'd asked me about that.
Yeah. Talk about it.
So I went to the AFCA convention, the American Football Coach Association convention. I go every year. I believe in the profession and making sure that I'm staying up to speed and know people at the college ranks, high school ranks, and that I'm doing all my classes, certifications, right? So I go to that every year. I went to the convention in Nashville in 2020 and came across a booth where they were going over virtual reality. It was called Reps VR. And they put me in the headset, kind of gave me what they're going to train me in the system. And I was like, man, I want to get this because it's an immersive tool. You take it from a GoPro 360 on the quarterback's helmet, capture what they see out at the practice field, and then you put it into the computer and you create performance measures, meaning like whatever they need to look at pre-snap, how many safeties, or if they're looking at the safeties alignment to the field, like where is he in relation to the slot, the nickel, where is he in relation, or the corner, whatever their process is, you can put that in there, and they've got to be able to verbalize it because there's science backing that. If you verbalize things, just the like speaking it is going to create that better pattern recognition, and you're going to be able to understand like these small little patterns and movement of defenders at a higher level and be able to anticipate faster and play faster, right? Like that's like the whole premise behind it. And then at the snap, you could build it a few different ways. You could either have them verbalize like their progression and then what route they're going to throw to using a brevity code. And again, like just that language is going to help them really cement the reads and understand where their eyes are supposed to be. And it uses eye tracking technology. So if you teach the quarterback to always look to the boundary safety, like and communicate his alignment, it's going to track that. And you got to verbalize it, and the system grades you out. So I was sold on it because how many times have we been in the film room, we're watching something, and we're the most knowledgeable one in the room, and we're super excited about it. That's why we coach. We love it. We could do that for hours, watch film. But the kids aren't as excited as you are. And they're getting glazy eyed, and they're not freaking paying attention. I'm sorry. I don't care how good of a coach you are. There's that point at where it's like diminishing returns. But in this tool, you can't hide. You can't hide. And there's two different modes. So there's like the on-premise mode that you have at the school. You could have a tethered headset. You could be in the quarterback room. Everybody sees a rep that's going on. The quarterback that's in it's getting graded on it, right? And then there's a portable system that you could take home. That's obviously more inexpensive. Where if the coaches have the on-premise system, they can create a playlist just like in Huddle, and then send the kid home with the clips. And here's the beautiful part: the backup is getting the reps that the starter took.
Right.
That's
a big deal.
That is a big deal, because how many times have you had to go with the backup quarterback that pees down his leg and is just not ready? But if you get him in this immersive environment, which hits to 80 to 90% of functional equivalency, like that's the goal with VR, right? You're trying to create and replicate an environment where somebody could actually take that information and use it. But you can't do that in CGI as well. You can't do that in computer animated imagery, right? And so like that's where our product is at the top of the market from that, because we're taking it from the actual GoPro footage, the 360 footage, and the player thinks that they're in it, actually doing it, right? So
It's
Really
incredible.
excited
And it
about it. The
develops the
people
young
that I
QBs too, right? So not just the backup who has to go in. Maybe that guy's going to be the starter the next year, right? So it doesn't limit their development because they're not taking as many reps. They still getting mental reps so they can continue to hopefully develop when they have to get in there, like that. I think that's the worst. That's the great thing about it. The worst thing for a quarterback that's a backup or a younger quarterback is that because they don't get the physical reps, all of a sudden now now when they're thrust into a position, they haven't had that opportunity. Now they got to do it all over again. Whereas they could get way ahead of the curve. Now when it's time for them to get the physical reps, they're ready to go. So a guy who's, I actually think that might help guys be more willing to wait in college, because if you're the backup and you're at a Division I school, any school, and you're the backup and you're not getting the reps, and then you say, well, you know what? How am I going to get better if I don't play, right? So I got to go somewhere else. This is the big thing with transferring. I got to go somewhere else so I could play to give myself more of an opportunity to be better, right? Well, if you're able to get the mental reps at this, even if you're not physically going, as much as the starting quarterback, now you have an opportunity where you're continuing to get better. So you'll feel comfortable if you're going to have an opportunity to be the guy the next year versus being in the situation where you're like, oh my God, I got to start from ground zero. That's really that's fascinating. The VR thing is fascinating to me.
And you're also doing stuff without having to worry about health issues, right? Or getting banged up or doing any of that kind of stuff. You're still getting all of that work, without having to, take a hit here or there or any of those other physical intangibles that now like factor into that process, right? Like you're just not taking that physical beating.
It's a great investment. Like a school district, they would benefit from purchasing this because you're really promoting getting extra reps and you're mitigating risk, right? Where the athlete's going to be more prepared to protect themselves too.
Absolutely.
Right? Like a linebacker, if you put set recognition clips on there from the middle linebacker's helmet or the nickel or the Sam or the Will, and they have that vantage point, all your other backups or kids that are coming up are going to be able to get that vantage point, and they're going to have to communicate the set, right? They're going to have to communicate what they see, and they got to do it within a time. It's time bound, and the system grades them out. And then at the snap, whether you're a pattern match team, whether you're looking for if they go 4 strong on you, and then you got a certain responsibility on the backside of that coverage responsibility, you're able to get to it faster, or if they're running power, they're running gaps, any type of gap scheme, you're able to identify what's happening up front and get those extra read steps as a linebacker. Colorado State uses it for their offensive line room. Bill Best has his 5 guys with cameras on during practice. And the main goal is to be able to get those extra reps in the film room of the team that they're playing, games and their stunts, the best pass rushers, top moves. They really study that. And they make sure that the scout look is giving them that look, so that there's when he's setting up that move, and then they're able to get extra reps in the hotel room before the game, and they're able to stone people.
Yeah.
With those extra reps, or even on line combos, like O-line running zone, understanding when to come off of that zone pair to work up to a linebacker. Sorry, guys. Freaking. I got the loud in the background. I'm gonna put my headset on. So it's a tool, again, that I'm a consumer of. I've had the opportunity to demo it to some NFL coaches here recently. And I'm pumped about it. I'm pumped about 2025 and getting in front of more coaches. The real fun thing for me as being a football coach and training quarterbacks is I get to see how a lot of people do their pre-snap processes and talk through it and give them little nuggets. I was meeting with a D1 QB coach yesterday, and we were just talking about reading out a snag concept and the identifiers he has pre-snap and the language that we could use to be able to streamline it. Because we already, as quarterback coaches or football coaches, we know the term sky, we know the term buzz, we know the term rat, we know the term, cover 4 mini or what have you, like whatever language you're using. Why not have that as part of a brevity coding system where they're seeing it and it tells the whole picture? Because if I say sky, I know that the linebacker is going to be playing hook curl, right? Or coming, right? And I know the corner's retreating because there's no help over the top for him. And there's going to be a post player, right? Or if it's a quarters look, like, so I think this tool really helps you as a coach trim and eliminate all the extra language and start using like 1 word or 2 word codes that speak to the whole technique.
Absolutely.
So
Awesome.
I'm fired up about it. I mean,
It's
I'd love to
amazing.
give you guys a demo at some point.
Definitely.
Show you
Absolutely.
guys. And then the
Definitely.
founder, Dutch France, and the co-founder, Joe Ashfield. I've known Joe when he was at Stanford. Actually, he was a GA at Stanford when I was a manager at Stanford. So I've known Joe for a while. And then Dutch is a former Green Beret and Army Ranger. He's a bad dude, and he's a performance psychologist PhD from Stanford. Super interesting guy.
Tell me, guys lived a couple lives, that's for sure.
But like just thinking about how those high level special operators need to communicate, where language is so vital to their health and their safety
But
and
like their
executing a mission.
livelihood.
Yeah. Like we can apply those principles to our teaching, can't we?
Absolutely.
As coaches.
Absolutely.
And that's where I really connected with this. Where
fighter pilots use sims all the time, right?
Right, you can't always just hop up in an F-16
you can't just
and
hop
say,
in
I'm going for a ride.
Exactly. Yep. So those things are expensive, so they got to sim it as much as possible. But yeah, no, this has been great. What's your website? Just say it out loud so we can have that in there, and then we'll let you go. We've taken enough of your time. Let's go back to your family.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's been great. Thanks for asking me to be on this. It's been a lot of fun. Obviously, I could talk about ball all day. BradyPerformance.com. I'm gonna be changing some things up as far as like my back end stuff for my softwares. But currently, it's BradyPerformance.com. Brady Performance Football on Instagram will definitely be one that'll stay active. At Coach Doug Brady on X. And then there's a YouTube channel where there's some examples of me breaking down film, some other stuff from maybe some of my training sessions. I'm a little kind of spotty on the YouTube, but I have posted some stuff. But yeah, and then Doug at BradyPerformance.com. That's my email address. That'll stay. But I'm thinking about rebranding the website and using another tool for it, just because I kind of scaled back the training business.
Right.
Yeah.
Sounds
Either
good.
way, Coach, it's been amazing. I really appreciate it. I learned a shit ton. Excited to see kind of where you take it in the next couple, as you move forward and progress into what you're doing. But I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been awesome.
Absolutely.
It's great.
Very nice to meet you, Coach.
Appreciate you, man.
Great seeing you as always, Coach. Great talking to you.
Likewise.
We'll talk to you soon. We'll definitely get a demo together too. We'll touch base about that.
We'll get you out to this East Coast stuff. We'll get you out here, brother.
What's that?
Coach. I said we'll get you to get you out to New York again. We'll get you to the East Coast as soon as we can.
Dude, I love it. Like, I want to go to Essa Bagels right now, man. Let's go.
That's it, brother. Let's go.
I got a Yankee sweatshirt too. Padres.
Careful out there.
Padres
we did
colors,
beat the Padres. But... careful now. We got Juan Soto too, so watch out.
I love Soto.
If you want, Coach, in the wintertime, you could swap. You could have my house, and then I could have your house.
Yeah. We're more than happy. More than happy, Coach. You could come shovel snow and do all that fun stuff, buddy.
We're struggling here in Southern Cal, man. I mean, golly, it's rough.
Yeah, I know California is a tough state.
Yeah, it's really hard to live in the best, climate in the entire United States.
Really, well, they don't like the taxes out there. The taxes are too high in California.
I know.
Everything's too high.
I know it.
Sorry.
I know.
All right, Coach. I'll let you go.
Guys, Coach, appreciate you.
All right. That was fantastic.
Awesome stuff right there, man. Awesome stuff right there.
Great stuff. Really, really great stuff. We really got to talk some ball. I learned something new quarterback wise that I think is really interesting. It's VR thing is really interesting because a few years ago I interviewed I can't remember his name, but there was a company that was doing that stuff, and they had spread out. I think they sold to what do they call them? Private equity, and
Go figure.
yeah, and then it kind of like I don't know if it died on a vine or it's only in a few schools. But I don't know what happened to it. But I always thought like this thing has
The price point for some of that stuff, you know what I mean?
Maybe
like,
that's it. Maybe, yeah.
I mean, think about it. Not everybody had Huddle to begin with, right? And then all of a sudden that kind of like became a thing, and the price
That's
point
true. It used to be very expensive. You're right.
right? Like only a select few, and then it was, oh, only a few people have Huddle Assist, or only
It
a
took a
few
long
people have
time.
Huddle Sideline. And you know, it kind of just sometimes this stuff gets like brought into a market, and then before you know it, like everybody's on it, right? And you know, maybe the VR stuff is kind of, now that it's becoming more of, you know what I mean, like a norm type thing. Maybe price point comes down, everybody can kind of jump on this type thing. But look, for me, the one thing that I took, like the safety aspect of it, where guys can get reps without the physical beating going onto their body, especially from a quarterback position. And then that live stuff where you're really in it, because unless you're playing the game and seeing that stuff, look, we can throw as many routes on air or throw defenses out there as much as possible. But when the lights are on, right, and the bullets are flying, like to get those reps at that or like that, I just think it's second to none.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It's really some of these comments that people say.
I know, it's hilarious. Go from younger to middle aged, I guess. I guess you're the old guy now. I don't know.
Then end up like Coach.
Like, all right, like we're good. It's kind of funny.
Let me tell you something. If you look as good as me at my age, you'll be lucky.
Yeah.
These people. You're damn right, man. Anyway, but that's hilarious. People are funny, dude. They are so funny.
People have a lot of time on their hands, bro.
Oh God.
Everybody's got an opinion, dude.
That's why it's so funny. The funniest is when I see like Coach JB start yelling at the people that type in things.
He's just lighting people up. It's like, dude, this guy is sitting in his basement, has never played a snap of football in their life, like is like one of these Madden gurus, and you're sitting here like worried about what his comments are. Like, dude, whatever.
I guess it makes
It's a funny world we're living in, Dave. Funny world we're living in.
Oh, it is. All right. Look, that was really good. That was really, really good podcast. Really good. All right. Well, and we'll be back tomorrow. We have the Rowan head coach. And,
yep, brand new, just kind of in the building, like, you know, only a couple months, if that, really, kind of. So it'll be nice to be good to talk to him and see kind of his perspective. Probably one of the younger head coaches in college football in general. So I'm excited to talk to him.
Awesome. Let's get ourselves out the show.